Picture this. You're grinding 80 hours a week, crushing yourself under deadlines, sacrificing sleep for success. Meanwhile, that guy who barely seems to lift a finger just landed the opportunity of a lifetime. Your first thought? Life is unfair. But what if I told you something that would shatter everything you believe about success? Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher famous for declaring God is dead, saw through the biggest lie of modern society. The lie that working hard makes you successful. The lie that effort equals achievement. The lie that the person who suffers the most wins. He called it slave morality. And right now, as you watch this, you're probably living it without even knowing. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will either set you free or make you deeply uncomfortable. Maybe both. Here's what nobody tells you. The system needs you to believe that hard work leads to success. Why? Because if you're busy working, you're not busy thinking. You're not asking dangerous questions like, why am I working this hard for someone else's dream? Nietzsche wrote in Beyond Good and Evil, the essential thing in heaven and earth is that there should be long obedience in the same direction. But he wasn't praising obedience. He was warning you about it. Society wants your long obedience. Your boss wants your long obedience. The entire system is built on your long obedience, and they dress it up in beautiful language, don't they? Hard work pays off. No pain, no gain. Success is 99% perspiration. These are all lies, cleverly designed to keep you running on a hamster wheel while others, who understand the real game, walk away with everything you're working for. Think about it. The person who works 80 hours a week doesn't get twice the results of the person who works 40. They get exhausted, burned out, and eventually replaced. Because here's the brutal truth that Nietzsche understood. The marketplace doesn't reward effort, it rewards value. And value and effort are not the same thing. Walk into any corporate office right now. You'll see two types of people. First, the worker bees. Heads down, grinding through tasks, always busy, always stressed, always trying to prove their worth through visible effort. Then there are the others, the ones in strategic meetings, the ones whose names come up in executive discussions, the ones who seem to work less but achieve more. What's the difference? The worker bees believe in what Nietzsche called the morality of the herd. Work hard, follow the rules, be good, and you'll be rewarded. The others, however, understand what he called the will to power. Now, this isn't about power over other people. It's about power over your own existence. The ability to create value rather than just execute tasks. Think about the last time you stayed late at work, answered emails at midnight, or skipped lunch to meet a deadline. Did anyone really notice? Did it change your career trajectory? Or did you just become known as the reliable person who says yes to everything? Nietzsche would look at you and say you're practicing self-overcoming in reverse. Instead of overcoming your limitations to become who you truly are, you're overcoming your own needs, your sleep, your health, your peace of mind, to become what others want you to be. And here's something that will really blow your mind. The concept of hard work as a virtue is relatively new in human history. For thousands of years, leisure was the mark of the elite. The ability to think, to create, to philosophize, that was true status. Work, that was what slaves did. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and suddenly the narrative flipped. Factories needed workers, capitalism needed consumers, the system needed you to glorify your own suffering. So they created an entire mythology around hard work. Benjamin Franklin's early to bed and early to rise, the Protestant work ethic, the American dream, all beautiful stories with a single purpose, to make you volunteer for your own exploitation. Nietzsche saw this trap over a century ago. He wasn't telling you to be lazy. That's a complete misreading. He was telling you to be smart, to stop measuring your life in hours worked and start measuring it in value created. So how do you escape this trap? The first step is to question the narrative. Every time you find yourself glorifying the grind, ask yourself, whose grind is this really? And who is benefiting most from my exhaustion? Is it you, or is it the system that thrives on your obedience? The second step is to redefine what work means to you. Instead of just completing tasks, focus on solving problems. The person who just checks off a to-do list is replaceable. The person who identifies a major problem and creates an innovative solution is indispensable. That's the shift from effort to value. This isn't about working less, it's about working with intention. It's about directing your energy where it matters most, not just where it's most visible. For example, instead of spending 10 hours on a report that no one will read, spend 2 hours having a strategic conversation that could change the direction of the company. That's leverage. Nietzsche's Übermensch, or Overman, isn't a superhero. It's a person who creates their own values, who lives authentically, and who refuses to be just another cog in the machine. It's someone who has the courage to ask, "Is there a better way?" and then goes out and builds it. The system will resist this. Your boss might not understand why you're not busy all the time. Your colleagues deep in the herd mentality might even resent you for it. They'll call you lazy or uncommitted because your freedom highlights their own chains. But you have to hold your ground. You have to trade the comfort of being a hard worker for the terrifying, liberating responsibility of being an effective one. This means learning to say no. It means protecting your time and your energy as your most valuable assets. It means choosing deep, focused work over the shallow busyness that society applauds. Look at the most successful people you can think of, the true innovators, the game changers. Are they known for answering emails the fastest? Or are they known for their big ideas, their unique perspectives, their ability to create something from nothing? They didn't get there by outworking everyone. They got there by outthinking everyone. So the next time you feel that pressure to work late, to sacrifice your weekend, to prove your worth through sheer exhaustion, take a moment. Remember Nietzsche. Ask yourself, am I running on the hamster wheel of slave morality? Or am I exercising my will to power, creating my own path, and defining success on my own terms? The choice is yours. You can continue to trade your life for a paycheck, glorifying the struggle, or you can start playing a different game entirely. The game of value, of leverage, and of true authentic power over your own life. Thanks for watching. If this idea challenged you or sparked something inside you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that questions the conventional wisdom. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one. He wrote, "Is not life 100 times too short for us to bore ourselves? Yet you're spending your one existence boring yourself to death in meetings that could have been emails, doing work that doesn't matter, proving your worth to people who will replace you the moment it's convenient." But there's something even more insidious happening. Something about human psychology that makes you defend the very system that's using you. It's called the sunk cost fallacy, mixed with cognitive dissonance. You've invested years, maybe decades, working hard. If you admit now that hard work doesn't guarantee success, you have to face the possibility that you wasted your time. That's psychologically unbearable. So instead, you double down. You work harder. You tell yourself stories. Just a little more effort. Just one more year. Just one more promotion. This is what Nietzsche meant when he wrote, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. As well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions. They cease to be mind." Your mind has calcified around the belief that suffering equals success because admitting otherwise would break you. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus graduated top of his class, landed a job at a prestigious consulting firm, worked 100-hour weeks for 5 years straight, missed his sister's wedding, missed his father's last birthday, sacrificed relationships, health, everything for the promise of partnership. Then the company restructured. Marcus was let go. Not because he wasn't good enough, because he was expensive, and they found someone younger willing to work just as hard for half the salary. 5 years of sacrifice gone. But here's the twist. Marcus's college roommate, Jake, took a different path. Jake worked normal hours, invested time in building genuine relationships, understanding how organizations actually work, creating value that couldn't be easily replaced. Today, Jake runs his own consulting firm. Marcus works for him. Same starting point. Completely different understanding of how the game is played. Jake understood what Nietzsche called the revaluation of all values. The ability to question everything you've been taught and create your own value system. The myth of meritocracy is society's most effective control mechanism. If you believe that hard work automatically leads to success, then when you fail, you blame yourself rather than the system. It's genius, really. The people at the top stay at the top. The people at the bottom keep grinding. And everyone believes the system is fair because hard work is accessible to everyone. But Nietzsche would ask you a simple question. If hard work led to wealth, wouldn't construction workers and nurses be millionaires? The hardest working people in society are often the poorest. The wealthiest barely break a sweat. Jeff Bezos doesn't work 1,000,000 times harder than his warehouse workers. He understands leverage, systems, and value creation in ways they don't. That's not a moral judgment. It's an observation of how power actually flows in the world. Here's what changed everything for me. I spent years grinding, believing that if I just worked hard enough, success would come. 14-hour days, weekends, sacrificing everything. Then I watched someone half my age with a quarter of my experience get promoted, not because they worked harder, because they understood something I didn't. They understood that perception often matters more than reality. They understood that strategic visibility beats invisible effort. They understood that relationships trump raw productivity. And most importantly, they understood what Nietzsche meant by the will to power. They weren't trying to be good workers. They were trying to become powerful creators. There's a massive difference. The good worker executes tasks. The powerful creator shapes reality. The good worker follows the path. The powerful creator makes the path. Arthur Schopenhauer, who deeply influenced Nietzsche, wrote something that explains why hard work fails most people. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. When you're grinding through tasks, you're hitting targets someone else set for you. You're playing someone else's game by someone else's rules. The people who actually win are playing a completely different game. They're not working harder. They're working on different problems entirely. Think about every major breakthrough in human history. Did it come from someone grinding harder at the existing system, or from someone who stepped back and reimagined everything? The iPhone didn't come from Nokia working harder on flip phones. Tesla didn't come from GM optimizing internal combustion engines. Bitcoin didn't come from banks working harder on traditional finance. Breakthroughs come from people who stop grinding and start thinking. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. You're addicted to being busy, not because productivity makes you successful, but because busyness makes you feel important. Nietzsche would call this a distraction from the terror of confronting who you actually are. When you're busy, you don't have to think about whether your life has meaning. You don't have to face the possibility that you're running in circles. You don't have to ask if this is really what you want. Busyness becomes a drug, and like all drugs, you need more of it to feel the same effect. First it's 50-hour weeks, then 60, then 80. You wear your exhaustion like a badge of honor. You compete with others over who's more tired, more stressed, more overwhelmed. Congratulations, you've won a prize nobody actually wants. The prize of being too busy to live. Let me show you something that will change how you see every successful person you know. They all have one thing in common. It's not hard work. It's strategic laziness. Jeff Bezos famously makes very few decisions. Warren Buffett spends most of his day reading. Bill Gates takes think weeks where he does nothing but think. These aren't lazy people. They're strategically conserving their energy for what actually matters. They understand what Nietzsche meant when he wrote, "The doer alone learneth." But the frantic doer learns nothing, because they never stop to integrate what they're experiencing. The strategic thinker does less, but learns more. They create more value with less effort because they're operating from a completely different paradigm. They're not trying to outwork everyone. They're trying to outthink everyone. Here's the test that reveals whether you're working hard or working smart. Can you explain in one sentence what value you created today? Not what tasks you completed, what value you created. Most people can't answer this question. They completed tasks, attended meetings, responded to emails, but they can't articulate what actual value they added to the world. Nietzsche would say you're living in what he called the eternal recurrence of the same, doing the same meaningless things over and over, calling it productivity, wondering why nothing changes. The person who can answer that question, who can clearly articulate the value they create, is operating from a completely different level. They're not grinding through tasks, they're creating value. And value creation is what gets rewarded in the real world, not effort. The most successful people I know work less than everyone around them. But they work on the right things. They understand leverage. 1 hour spent on strategic thinking can be worth more than 100 hours of execution. One relationship built with the right person can be worth more than years of networking events. One insight can be worth more than decades of grinding. This is what Nietzsche meant by the revaluation of values. Everything you've been taught about how success works needs to be questioned, examined, and potentially discarded. The values that society gave you, work hard, be obedient, sacrifice yourself, these values serve the system, not you. There's a dirty secret that nobody in power wants you to discover. The harder you work, the less they have to pay you. Think about it. If you're willing to work 80 hours for a 40-hour salary, why would they pay you more? Your willingness to overwork is actually decreasing your value, not increasing it. This is basic economics. When supply exceeds demand, prices fall. You're supplying excess labor, so your price falls. Meanwhile, the person who works 30 focused hours and says no to everything else becomes scarce, and scarcity increases value. Nietzsche understood this principle of power. The powerful person doesn't make themselves available to everyone. They make themselves scarce, valuable, essential. The hard worker makes themselves available, replaceable, expendable. Carl Jung, Nietzsche's philosophical descendant, discovered something about human psychology that explains why smart people fall into the hard work trap. He called it the persona, the mask you wear to fit into society. You develop a persona of being the hard worker, the reliable one, the person who always delivers. This persona gets rewarded initially. You get praise, recognition, maybe even promotions. But here's the trap. You become identified with this persona. You start to believe that you are the hard worker. And if you stop working hard, you fear you'll lose your identity. So you keep grinding, not because it's working, but because you don't know who you'd be if you stopped. Jung would say you need to integrate your shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected. Maybe you've rejected the part of you that wants to be strategic rather than productive. Maybe you've rejected the part of you that wants to work less and think more. Maybe you've rejected the ambitious part of you that wants to play a bigger game than just being a good employee. Here's what happens when you integrate your shadow and stop working hard for the sake of working hard. Initially, people get uncomfortable. Your boss might question your commitment. Your colleagues might think you're slacking. Your family might worry about your stability. This discomfort is a test. Nietzsche called it the abyss. When you stare into the abyss of creating your own values rather than following society's values, the abyss stares back. Most people blink. They return to the safety of hard work, the comfort of the grind, the familiar pain of exhaustion. But the few who don't blink discover something extraordinary. They discover what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of one's fate. They stop working hard trying to become someone else and start working strategically on becoming who they truly are. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. Sarah spent 10 years as a management consultant, billing 80 hours a week, flying constantly, sacrificing everything for her career. Then she made a radical decision. She cut her hours in half and started spending her time differently. Instead of grinding through client work, she focused on thought leadership. She wrote articles, spoke at conferences, built a personal brand. Her income initially dropped. Her peers thought she was sabotaging her career. But within 2 years, Sarah was making 3 times what she made as a consultant, working 30 hours a week, doing work that actually mattered to her. What changed? She stopped trading time for money and started trading value for money. She stopped being a hard worker and became a value creator. This is what Nietzsche meant by self-overcoming. Not working harder to be better at what you do, but transcending what you do entirely to become something new. The most dangerous lie you've been told is that there's virtue in suffering. That struggle makes you stronger. That pain is weakness leaving the body. That no pain means no gain. Nietzsche would destroy this lie. He wrote, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger." But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, seek out suffering. He didn't say, the more you suffer, the stronger you become. He said, that which doesn't kill you. The suffering that nearly destroys you might make you stronger if you survive it. But unnecessary suffering, self-imposed grinding, voluntary exhaustion, these don't make you stronger. They make you weaker, more tired, more burned out, more resentful. The person who works 80 hours isn't twice as strong as the person who works 40. They're half as effective because they're exhausted. Here's something that will completely reframe how you think about success. The most valuable skill in the modern world isn't hard work. It's pattern recognition. The ability to see what others don't see, to connect dots that others don't connect, to understand systems that others don't understand. And pattern recognition doesn't come from grinding harder. It comes from stepping back, observing, thinking, integrating. When your head's down grinding, you can't see patterns. You're too close to the work. The person who works less but thinks more sees the patterns that the hard worker misses. They see the opportunities, the threats, the shifts in the market, the changes in technology. And seeing these patterns is worth infinitely more than any amount of hard work. Nietzsche wrote about the Übermensch, often mistranslated as Superman. But he didn't mean someone with superhuman abilities. He meant someone who has overcome human limitations by creating their own values. The Übermensch doesn't work hard because society says so. The Übermensch creates value because it serves their vision. There's a massive difference. The hard worker is reactive, responding to what others demand. The value creator is proactive, shaping what others will demand. The hard worker is a follower, doing what the system requires. The value creator is a leader, changing what the system rewards. And this transformation from hard worker to value creator is what Nietzsche called becoming who you are. Not who society wants you to be, who you actually are beneath all the programming. Let me give you a framework that will change everything. Instead of asking, how can I work harder? Start asking, how can I create more value with less effort? This question forces you to think about leverage, systems, delegation, automation, strategic positioning. The hard worker tries to do everything themselves. The value creator builds systems that do the work for them. The hard worker trades time for money. The value creator builds assets that generate value independent of their time. The hard worker is trapped in the present, constantly grinding. The value creator invests in the future, building momentum that compounds. This is what Nietzsche meant by the will to power. Not the power to work harder, but the power to shape reality itself. Here's the final test. Imagine you could only work 1 hour per day. What would you do with that hour? Your answer reveals whether you understand value creation, or you're still trapped in the hard work paradigm. The hard worker would panic. Only 1 hour? I can't get anything done. The value creator would think strategically. 1 hour on the right thing can change everything. They'd focus on the highest leverage activities, building relationships with key people, creating content that reaches thousands, making strategic decisions that shape direction, thinking deeply about complex problems. The hard worker tries to do everything. The value creator does the one thing that makes everything else easier or unnecessary. This is the difference between exhaustion and impact. But there's something deeper happening here that Nietzsche understood about human nature. We don't actually want what we say we want. We say we want success, freedom, wealth, impact. But what we actually want is the feeling of being good enough. And society has convinced us that being good enough requires suffering. The Protestant work ethic, the glorification of grinding, the worship of busyness, these aren't about success. They're about proving your worth through visible suffering. Because if success came easy, if you could create massive value without grinding yourself into dust, what would that say about all the people who are grinding? Would say they're doing it wrong, and nobody wants to admit that. So instead, we create a culture that celebrates suffering and pathologizes ease. The people who actually change the world operate from a completely different paradigm. They understand what philosophers call first principles thinking. Instead of optimizing within the existing system, they question the system itself. Instead of working harder at their job, they ask whether they should have that job at all. Instead of grinding through tasks, they ask whether those tasks need to exist. This is what Nietzsche meant when he talked about the revaluation of all values. Not just working within the existing value system, but creating an entirely new one. And creating a new value system requires something most people never access: the courage to be misunderstood, the strength to face criticism, the confidence to trust your own judgment over society's expectations. Here's what changed for me personally. I spent years trying to prove I was good enough through hard work. I thought if I just worked harder than everyone else, I'd eventually succeed. But I was playing a game I couldn't win because the game itself was rigged. The harder I worked, the more I was expected to work. The more I delivered, the more was demanded of me. I was trapped in what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. Always running, never arriving. Then I read Nietzsche and everything clicked. He wrote, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. There is no right way to build a life. There's only your way. And your way might not involve grinding yourself into dust for someone else's dream." The final piece of this puzzle is understanding what Nietzsche called eternal recurrence. He asked, if you had to live your exact life over and over forever, would you choose it? Most people recoil in horror at this question because they're living lives they don't actually want. They're grinding through days they wish would end, waiting for some future moment when things will be different. But the future never comes. There's only the eternal present. And if your present involves sacrificing yourself on the altar of hard work, hoping that someday it will pay off, Nietzsche would tell you you're living in bad faith. You're lying to yourself about what your life actually is. The person who has truly overcome the hard work paradigm can answer Nietzsche's question with a resounding yes. They're not grinding through a life they hate, hoping for a future that may never come. They're creating a life they'd be willing to live forever. So here's where you are right now. You've been programmed since childhood to believe that hard work equals success. You've spent years, maybe decades, living by this rule. You've sacrificed relationships, health, happiness, all for the promise that hard work would eventually pay off. And now you're faced with a terrifying possibility. What if everything you've been taught is wrong? What if the hard work paradigm is just a control mechanism designed to keep you productive, but not powerful? What if there's another way? A way that requires less effort but more thought, less grinding but more strategy, less suffering but more impact. This realization is what Nietzsche called the death of God. Not literal God, but the death of all the external authorities that told you how to live. Your parents, your teachers, society, the system. When these authorities die, you're left with something terrifying and liberating. Total freedom to create your own values. Total responsibility for your own life. The choice is yours, and it's the same choice that every philosopher, every creator, every person who actually changed the world has faced. You can keep grinding, keep working hard, keep hoping that eventually the system will reward your suffering. Or you can step back, think deeply, create strategically, and build a life based on value creation rather than time served. The first path is easier in some ways. It's what everyone else does. You'll have company in your suffering. The second path is lonelier. You'll face criticism, doubt, misunderstanding. But the second path leads somewhere the first path never reaches, to becoming who you actually are beneath all the programming, to creating value that actually matters, to building a life you'd choose to live forever. Your entire existence comes down to this moment of choice. Every single person watching this video right now stands at the exact same crossroads that Nietzsche stood at, that every philosopher who dared to think differently stood at. You know the truth now. Working hard doesn't guarantee success. The system needs your obedience more than you need the system. Value creation beats time served. Strategic thinking trumps mindless grinding. This truth cannot be unlearned. You cannot go back to innocent belief in the hard work paradigm. The question is what you do with this knowledge. Write in the comments right now, I choose creation over grinding. Let me see who's ready to step off the hamster wheel and start building something that actually matters. Let me see who has the courage to face what Nietzsche faced, the terror and beauty of total freedom. Subscribe to this channel because the rabbit hole goes deeper than you think. Everything you believe about success, about relationships, about power, about meaning, all of it needs to be examined. All of it might be programming designed to keep you useful but not powerful. The next video will shatter another comfortable lie that you've been living. Another truth that the system desperately needs you not to discover. Another piece of the puzzle that transforms how you see reality itself. You've already started the journey by watching this video. The only question is whether you have the courage to keep going. Click that subscribe button. Because once you start seeing through the lies, once you start questioning everything, once you start creating your own values instead of accepting society's values, there's no going back. And trust me, you won't want to.